What's up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? I got a special guest with me, my man Sunil. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
What's up? Thank you, Raj. My name is Sunil. I go by So Real Sunil on Twitter. Just finally glad to be on the show with my man. Our SF 49ers, bro. Big channel, big Twitter. I appreciate you giving me the time, man.
Hey, I appreciate you hopping on, man. Like we said, we got to keep this rolling. And anytime I get someone to collab with me, it's always good times. But today we got a lot to talk about. So I'm going to hit the intro and we'll get right into it. All right. So basically, let's get right into it. The big news of the day, obviously, we know the surgery date has been set for Brock Purdy, February 22nd. And Ian Rappaport's reporting that he should be available for training camp. So if that's true and everything holds up, this might be the most epic training camp battle of all time. Trey Lance in one corner, and then you got Brock Purdy in another corner. This could be like Street Fighter, right? So you got Brock versus Trey, man. And I saw you tweeted before I hopped on. I saw you said maybe Jacoby Brissett. So I want to get your take. Who should be the 49ers starting quarterback this year? Who do you think's going to be? And then let's get into who you think should be that veteran backup for those guys. So go right into it, my man.
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, it's great news to know that they finally locked down a date and kind of know what they're going to do as far as with Brock Purdy. It's great because everybody's saying it's that 6-month timeline. I don't know how the math works out for Ian Rappaport, right? Because 6 months means, I know our boy Rohan was doing the math and he said that probably means he's available by like in the preseason maybe, but he would miss all of like training camp, OTAs, all that kind of stuff. But let's just assume, because I think this answer is different, obviously based off of health, right? If Brock Purdy isn't healthy, I think the answer is different. But let's say everybody's healthy. Everybody's ready to go. Brock Purdy's 100% ready for training camp. So it's a true battle. Who do I think wins? That's a great question. And it's kind of like Ryu versus like Guile, bro. Like, because at the end of the day, right, it's two guys that you love to cheer for. It's two guys that have very unique styles and bring something to the table that the other don't do. Like Brock Purdy, so like when it comes to mobility, Brock Purdy has that mobility, but Trey Lance has mobility at a different level, right? Accuracy, Trey Lance does have accuracy, but Brock Purdy's accuracy is a little bit, better. So, I want to see that battle because you want to see kind of who wins that. And the mentality of both of them kind of seems like they're both ready for the challenge. Now, if you're asking me who do I think wins that battle, like if it's straight off of football, Raj, I'm going to say Trey wins. Okay. And the reason for that, I just think he's, bigger, stronger, faster, stronger arm. I think he opens up, not that Brock doesn't, but he opens up things in the playbook that Brock just kind of has some limitations to. But I don't know if it's just football. You know what I mean? Like there's some players on the team that really, really kind of like Brock Purdy. Obviously, the team has seen themselves be able to win with Brock Purdy. So it's going to be interesting, man. I don't know. Do you think it's going to be just based off of pure football, or do you think there's going to play some politics as well?
I mean, this is the San Francisco 49ers. 30 years ago, we're still talking about the biggest quarterback controversy of all time. We saw Montana's throwing shade at Steve. So to me, right, it's not just going to be pure football. It's going to be political. There's going to be some hearsay here and that, Yeah. Obviously, on the cameras, they're going to, I love this guy. But, in the background, there's some noise. So to me, there is a few factors. This is multi-layered. Like you said, if Brock Purdy's 100% healthy and he's ready to go, then it's going to be a true battle. But, going on the timeline, you're right. It is kind of it's iffy to say he's going to be ready for training camp and be full go to be in all the drills. But, Jimmy, he wasn't necessarily full go in training camp, but he was still there. He was able to throw in the back. So he was still in the shadows. So I think Brock will be somehow, some way in the mix in some capacity at training camp. He may be limited. He may not be doing all the drills, but he's going to be there. So I think that is also a factor because, yeah, Trey's going to be out there. He's got to prove himself. Brock already, in a way, he kind of proved himself to this team. He took him to an NFC championship. He was kind of thrown into the fire. They had nothing to do but trust this young man, and he took him far. And I think you're right. That plays a big part into this team because as much as, the fans don't really necessarily want Jimmy to be back or whatever, in 2019, they went to a Super Bowl. Then they wanted to replace him. We went through all that whole, these last 2 years of offseason. But you have players that vouch for him, like Kittle and Juice. They vouch for him because they went to war with them. They went to a Super Bowl. They're going to remember that. The 49ers are going to remember Brock taking them to that NFC Championship game. He was their guy in battle. They saw him go down. Like, you'd see the stories they're talking about how, man, it was just debilitating. Like Christian McCaffrey today with Kay Adams said, it was just sucks when the quarterback went down. And Debo, he says, we didn't really know if the Eagles' secondary is good because we didn't really get to test them. So I feel like this team does see Brock maybe ahead of Trey. So Trey has a lot to prove. And he said it today in his interview with Rich Eisen. He's like, look, I don't want the job to be handed to me. He knows he wants to go out there and prove himself, but I think they're going to make him. They're going to make him because he really,
for sure.
We don't know what he's about.
Yeah, and I mean, look, like one thing that the 49ers do a great job of drafting. So there's always like young talent on the team, Hufanga, Ayuk, all these guys. But a big part of this team are kind of getting up there in age, right? Like, so like, Trent Williams, like how many more years does he have in him? Some of these guys on the defense, how many more prime years do they have in them? So it's like they also understand that, we got to win here pretty quickly because contracts, all that kind of stuff is going to play a part eventually. So it seems, and, there's a lot of praise for Purdy. I think Debo in his interview called him a future GOAT. You know what I mean? So like, are you good? If you're calling him a future GOAT, are you putting a future GOAT on the bench? You know what I mean? Like crazy. That, it kind of, and when you get the receiver saying that, when you got, but then Trey came back and talked about how close he is with CMC. So the good thing about it is like both of these quarterbacks, I think, understand what's there. I think both of these quarterbacks, the thing about the Trey Lance interview you mentioned, Rogers, it just showed that how Trey was just so mature for his age. He understood what the situation was, how much he's a team first type guy. Like he didn't feel good unless he could contribute to the team. He knew he couldn't contribute on the field, but he was contributing through his presence in the locker room, through studying and all that kind of stuff, and helping Brock get the best out of Brock Purdy as well. And then, when Rich Eisen asked him about that whole QB controversy, he's like, yeah, obviously, like there's no way they could just hand me the position. Did you see how this boy balled out? He played really, really well. And it kind of looks like Trey understands that he might be QB2 right now. You know what I mean? If Brock Purdy was healthy, he's coming at it like he's QB2, have to earn QB1. And all he asked for was an opportunity to compete. My thing, Raj, is we've never seen Trey Lance win this job. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, when he came in as a rookie, I think they gave him every opportunity, especially in that preseason game against the Chargers. Yeah. Gave him every opportunity to win the job from Jimmy, right? Obviously, they invested so much and they were like, yo, like, if you could just show us that you could take this team and you could play better than, what Jimmy gave us at quarterback, it's your job. And he couldn't do that. Year 2, right? He didn't really have that competition because Jimmy was injured and couldn't, they were thinking about trading him. They just kind of handed it to him. Year 3, he's going to have to earn it, and we haven't seen him earn it. So it's going to be interesting. Obviously, I'm sure Trey sees the writing on the wall. Like, eventually, this could be a career-defining year for him. Not too many people get the chance that Geno got. Not too many people get the chance to, once you're labeled kind of something in that first 5 years of your of being a rookie.
It's hard to shed that bust. Because
exactly.
Let's be honest. Let's throw the word out there. I know what you're going to say, because if he doesn't come out. We got people already in the comments. Like, you've seen Twitter, you've seen the Twitterverse.
Yeah.
I mean, he's already getting doubted, and I feel like it's unjust because last year was going to be the year he was supposed to prove himself. He got hurt, so the injury basically limited him from proving it. He said it today. I haven't played football since before the COVID year, and
Yeah.
there were so many good things he said in that interview, and you hit them all. Is he knows this is not his job right now. He knows if Brock was healthy, he'd be QB2, and that was interesting to me because I didn't think he'd want to be that guy. I didn't think he would accept that. I think he's accepted it and like, look, man, this team is dope. He probably sees in the locker room. He sees how much they respect Brock. There's some comments in them. They say these people don't talk about Trey like that. He probably knows, like, shit, I came in. I took Jimmy's job. These guys, I probably ruffled their feathers. Hot shot, 21-year-old kid ruffling everybody's feathers. He probably feels the heat. He probably is like, fuck, I have to earn not only my respect with the fans and the media, the players. The players need to earn, like, he needs to earn their respect. It's no disrespect to Trey. I'm sure they love him as a human, as a person, because he is a good person. You could tell today in that interview that, he's a really good young man. He's well spoken. He's very. It showed his character. He has a very good character. He was raised well, but I think it also showed that he knows I got to know my role, shut my mouth, and go out there and prove it. So he knows that he needs to prove it. Everybody's out there and says he hasn't proven shit. Trey knows it. He knows he hasn't proven it. So,
which is great, right? I mean, to have that mentality, that at least gives you some hope that there is, like, at least he's looking at it the right way so he could come out and do the right things, right?
Yeah.
He also mentioned, Raj, earlier, like, he's not going to work on his throwing motion. So to me, that's good because he's going to spend all of his time just perfecting his craft and just kind of going with what's natural, right? I'm sure he understands that, look, I can't make this hard for me. I gotta focus my energy on what I needed. Obviously, we know, like, his accuracy, we would like him to get that up, especially the short intermediate type stuff. Obviously we know he has the long ball and he has to, really own this offense, right? He has to be able to get into that huddle, and they know what Brock Purdy does leading that huddle, right? And there was a lot of talk, Raj, about how Brock Purdy sounds like a veteran. He's grabbing people and telling them, putting them in their place and stuff like that. That's kind of stuff we didn't really hear about when Trey was out there. Yeah. Now, obviously, Trey didn't get that much opportunity. The games that he was in there, obviously, like the monsoon game, he was playing pretty well in the Seattle game where he ended up getting injured. So, obviously he didn't get the body of work he hasn't played as many games as Brock Purdy, but this team, we've seen that this team has kind of rallied behind one quarterback over the other in the past. Yeah. So I think that could be something. So it's going to be interesting, man. I do think that I think Brock Purdy is the leader in the locker room right now as far as who should be the quarterback. But like I said, I think Trey's going to get the opportunity because I don't think Brock Purdy is going to be healthy in time. So Trey's going to have a lot of opportunity to maybe win back some of the team.
Yeah, I think for Trey, this injury, definitely serves him well. And there's a comment here from Drew. He says, we honestly should be hyped to have more than one legit option. No way we could go into a season thinking one will last. Because he's right. Like, we went through so many quarterbacks. And at least as a fan, I'm like, okay, at least we know we have two quarterbacks. And if one doesn't work out, you got the other one who might work out. So it is a silver lining. But I'm just excited for this battle. And, with Trey, you're right. He hasn't shown that leadership stuff that Brock did. And, that's a difference. And again, what we talked about with Trey, like he said, he hasn't really played football in a long time. So maybe he hasn't had that opportunity to learn how to be a leader or get the opportunity to show he was a leader because it's a limited role, like you said. But Brock Purdy, he played 4 years in college. He came in and you saw the sideline, like the mic'd up. He was just, it just had a different vibe to him. Like he was like, okay, I'm the leader of this team. This is my opportunity. But also, I think their entrance into the team. So Brock Purdy, he had no pressure compared to Trey Lance. Numbers, last pick of the draft, 7th round pick, whatever.
Nobody thought he'd make the team.
Nobody thought he was going to make the team. We thought it was going to be Nate Sudfeld, right?
Yeah.
Trey Lance, a lot of draft capital they traded up. Everybody's like, he has to be the guy. There was a whole offseason Twitter fight of, is it Justin Fields? Is it Mac Jones? Is it Trey at 3? Like, who are you taking at 3? Like, he was already in a pressure cooker before he was even drafted. So there's a lot of pressure and the mental state of this young man. He's young. I know Brock is young too, but I feel like his adversity may be a little bit different than Trey's. And Trey's already being written off. And again, we saw Brock come in and it was like, damn, this guy he's it. Like we looked at his body of work in a short amount of time. And it was like, screw Trey. Look at this. Look at Brock. He took us to the
Right.
NFC champion. And this fan base yearns a championship so much that they're like, this is the guy. We were there. If he would have won that game, if he would have been healthy, we won the game. So I think that's what in everybody's mind, because honestly, we have not seen anything from Trey. So I don't blame fans for being skeptical, because we really don't know. And you're right. This is a career breaking. This is basically a legacy.
Career defining. Yeah.
This is it. Career defining. I like that, because this is either he goes out there and he proves, hey, I'm the fucking starter of the 49ers, or I just became a bust, So it's boomer bust from this year.
I push back a little bit, Raj, on the fact that on you saying that Trey hasn't shown leadership. I mean, last year he kind of took that QB1 job by the horns, as far as like knowing he was a QB1. Kyle Shanahan said he's QB1, so he had the offseason training. Remember, he was having practices with Brandon Ayuk, with other receivers and things like that. You saw him going out with like Kittle, like he was trying to bring that camaraderie and all that kind of stuff. So I don't want to get it misconstrued. Trey Lance definitely is a leader, but I think the point that both of us are making, there's a difference between in the locker room, on the practice ground and all that, from actually being in battle, being at kind of quote unquote war on the field and going through those adversities. They've seen Brock do it. I think everybody to a man believes Trey can do it, but they've seen Brock do it. So it's kind of like recency bias. It's kind of like one in the hand too. It's like, do we want to give the upside of Trey Lance, or do we want to go with what seems to be more of a known commodity in Brock Purdy, because they've gone to war with him, and obviously it took his ulnar nerve or whatever ligament to completely rupture to get his first NFL loss was due to an injury. You know what I mean? And here's the thing, man. He came back out. I think that the players, that's going to hold a lot of weight. That, even though this dude didn't have an elbow to throw with, he still came back out and tried, So there's a lot that Trey Lance has to overcome. And it's not because it's unfortunate for Trey Lance, because he hasn't done anything wrong other than not being able to be available. And that's kind of,
but as they say, the best ability is availability, right? And unfortunately, he hasn't been available. And that was Jimmy for a long extent. Was okay, he wasn't available. Let's move on to the next guy. And this is literally the same story in my mind. It's like, okay, Jimmy, you're not available. You suck. You can't stay healthy. Let's move on to the next guy. Trey, you're our guy. You got the high upside. Oh, you can't stay healthy. You suck. Look at Brock. Oh my God. And unfortunately, like you said, it was a catastrophic injury that kind of took him out to finally lose a game, right? But you're right. They went into battle. They went into war with this guy, and he got to that point. It's like they've seen it. They've seen it full head. And I want to kind of circle back to something you said about the window. The window's not going to be open forever. Eventually, that window closes and closes. I think maybe we got 2 more years with this roster, because not everybody's going to be in their prime forever. You got expiring contracts. You can't sign everybody. So I think there's a good 2 years, and maybe this team, if they don't think Trey is ready, do they want to have this guy who's maybe a project, who still needs a little bit of development, who's green behind the ears, to take this roster? And it's a what if. Will he be ready to take the team to Super Bowl? Where Purdy, I know he's young and he's still green, but he did it. He took him to the NFC Championship. So I think that's a big factor. And Trey touched on that today. He goes, I know it's a team with all these big parts, like Super Bowl
ready to win now.
He goes, it's a win now team, and I could see why people would push back on me. So it's interesting, man. And then Young Montana here says Trey hasn't played with CMC and only played with one game with Kittle. So that's another factor. Like, we haven't even seen Trey and CMC. Like you said, in his interview today, he mentioned like him and CMC have a pretty good relationship. So how is that going to play out on the field? So
obviously we know what CMC has done to these quarterbacks, right? Like, so that's one thing that I always mention when people mention, Jimmy's playing better, Brock Purdy's playing better. Obviously, both of those quarterbacks deserve praise for that. However, CMC came in and made every quarterback look like the best quarterback, right? We've seen Jimmy without CMC. We've seen Jimmy with CMC. Jimmy's numbers with CMC was some of the best football he's played. He went 4 games, no interceptions, which was unheard of from Jimmy Garoppolo. So I do think that, when Trey gets the opportunity to play with the full a bevy of talent that he's going to have, right? Not only CMC, but obviously the receiving core, Kittle, like the gentleman mentioned, only having Kittle for one game, and hopefully this offensive line will have another year of cohesion. I mean, obviously there's probably going to be some changes there, but obviously we're hoping that that's like a little bit of an upgrade. Get Elijah Mitchell back healthy, like he's going to have a lot more weapons than he had previously. What does Trey look? Because I truly believe if you're a competent starting quarterback, if you have the type of talent and the play caller in Kyle Shanahan that the 49ers have, anybody could be really successful if you're competent. I do believe Trey's competent.
If you're competent, yeah, I agree.
But how is he? Is he somebody that can be a force multiplier, or is he just going to be good enough? Because I think we saw Brock Purdy be able to take this team from 30 points a game to like plus 30, 40. And I think that's in the mind of the fan base and probably some of these players. Is Trey Lance going to be able to show that kind of upside with the offense? If he can, I think that, it's his job. I think it's truly his job if it can, because at the end of the day, you traded so much for him. So you have to, I think that at least the front office, they want Trey to be the guy, because otherwise it looks dumb. You use 3 first-round picks and he didn't even, he's not even your starter. So yeah, I think that's who they want to win. But like we're mentioning, man, it's going to be a tough uphill battle for him.
It is bad. It is. And you're right. I think in a sense they want him to win, because if you don't, you kind of look like you took an L. But on the flip side, to play devil's advocate, if Purdy wins, it's also a dub, because you're like, holy crap, you just scouted the Mr. Irrelevant and he became like Debo says, a future GOAT. If he's half of a future GOAT, you know what I mean, then you just struck gold and you're a freaking scouting legend. Adam Peters is going to get, money for his life. So there's two sides to it on every part of the spectrum. It's like, okay, if Trey Lance is a bust, and then if Brock Purdy pans out, it's like, well, you had a bust, but you also made up for it. So I see it both sides. I want both of them to be successful. I like them both. They're both very young, well-spoken gentlemen, and I pray for them both. But this fan base is going to pick their side a lot of the times, and it gets chaotic. Again, I just hope that both of them are given a fair chance. I hope Trey's given a fair chance. I think he deserves it at this point. This is his third year in the league. We don't even know what he's all about. So I think if he does hit his potential, though, he could be what a lot of people think he can be, that electric superstar with the deep pass in the running game. And he looks like that flashy player. But again, we don't know. It's an unknown commodity where we've seen a glimpse of Purdy. We're like, I like what I've kind of seen here. So it's tough, man. But regardless of whoever's going to start that point, because we could argue this all week, all month, it's going to happen for the next.
We are all off season.
It's going to be our off season again, because it's the San Francisco 49ers, and all we do is talk about quarterbacks every off season. Regardless, Kyle and John kind of hinted at they need to bring in a backup for those two guys, once they get into camp, and obviously you do, because right now those are the two rostered quarterbacks. You need depth, as we saw this year. So that takes us to who's going to be QB3. That's actually, to me, probably the more important quarterback that I'm looking at, because we know Brock and Trey, they're going to go out there, they're going to do their thing. They're two young players with a lot of potential. Who's going to back up them? Because if those two falter, that's the guy that we have to look at. Again, I did mention, you tweeted out Brissett. You think that's the top guy out there that we should get, or who else?
So here's the thing. I think when it comes to who is going to be the backup, because you say QB3, that's an ideal situation, right? Mm-hmm. We're hoping that Brock Purdy comes off of injury and everything goes well and all that kind of stuff. Surgery. Brock Purdy might not be ready at the beginning of the year. So this could be our QB2, right? Mm-hmm. And so obviously with two young quarterbacks, you'd like to have a vet in there. Why I said Brissett, right, because we know he's played a starter role, but also he has that mobility that I think is the new quarterback position for the 49ers, because both Trey and Brock both move. They're not just straight pocket passers. They like to roll out, play off of play action and things like that. So you don't want, unfortunately, Jimmy wasn't like that, right? So it's completely different going from Trey to Jimmy and then Jimmy to Brock kind of thing. So to have some more of that like continuity in that quarterback room, I think Brissett would be the number one option. The reason being, obviously, he started for half the season with Cleveland, played decent over there. Obviously, they weren't winning, but I think he still had some good games there. He played in Miami. I think he played well there. And then also, obviously he came from Bill Belichick in the New England Patriots. So he's a seasoned guy. I'm sure the young quarterbacks could learn a lot from him. But I think the rest of the league looks at him and probably sees the same thing. So he might be too expensive, but to me, he would be my number one option.
I think so. I think he'd be a solid guy because, again, he's a veteran. I think he could be a good mentor for those guys. I've said this a couple of times. I see them maybe bringing back Nate Sudfeld back in the fold just because he knows the system. He's been there. He can, I think, if Kyle was willing to give him $2 million last year, I think they at least bring him back for training camp to kind of be there to help mentor. But you're right. If Brock 100% isn't clear, they're still going to need a better QB2 leading into the system. I think they may even draft a quarterback. There's a bevy of quarterbacks out there.
I've been mentioning Hendon Hooker.
I like Hendon.
He's not going to be healthy either, though. He's not going to be healthy either, yeah.
You get a Hendon, and you're like, okay, you got another third quarterback with an injury. So if he was healthy, man, you'll go get me Hendon Hooker. 100%. But there's some other quarterbacks out there that, Larry and I were talking about the other night. But the other guy that keeps kind of coming into my mind is Teddy Bridgewater. I know he's not the greatest quarterback, but in this spectrum, in this kind of situation, you're not looking for the greatest. A guy that's serviceable, a game manager. I think Teddy Two Gloves might be a serviceable guy that could come in and do something. But I don't know. My prediction right now is they're definitely going to take Nate Sudfeld. I'd be surprised if they don't bring in Sudfeld this offseason. I'd be super surprised, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We've seen the 49ers bring back guys that have been here, and it didn't work out to quote unquote Josh Johnson, right? So do they bring back Nate Sudfeld? I think Bridgewater, I think, is a good name. He might have a little more familiarity now being under McDaniels in Miami, so he might know the system a little bit. Another guy, right, we're going to be talking about, Steve Wilks coming over as the defensive coordinator. There's a quarterback that's a free agent that was starting for him in Sam Darnold. So maybe Darnold comes in and, so the one thing about Darnold that I like is I don't think he thinks he's a starting quarterback right now. He knows he has to kind of earn his way back into that. So what better position than under Kyle Shanahan that can kind of maybe revamp his career? He knows there's not the pressure of him like being a starter. He can kind of just sit back and play his role as the mentor. But he also knows if he gets an opportunity, he could really showcase himself. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of, I think that would be an option that would be cheap and kind of fit the mold of what the 49ers need out of their third string quarterback, possibly backup quarterback. So those are the three names I'd really mention. I wasn't thinking about Sudfeld, so we can make it four, but Brissett would be number one. And then, Bridgewater, Darnold, or Sudfeld, I think would all be, good options.
Yeah, I like the Sam Darnold one. I didn't like him when they were rumoring him to be the starting quarterback of this team. I was like, God, please don't, because I agree with you. I don't think he's a starting caliber quarterback in this league. But I think last year kind of humbled him a little bit, and I think he realized, okay, maybe I'm, not a starter, but I can work my way up. Given the opportunity, I can prove myself again and reinvent myself. So I think he'd be okay as that backup quarterback,
He had them in playoff contention.
He did.
You know what I mean? When they traded away Baker Mayfield, they were almost, if they beat Tampa, they'd be in the playoffs with him as a starter. So, there is some confidence there. He probably has a connection with Steve Wilks. So, that could be an option as well.
I like that. You're right, because let's talk about that. Steve Wilks, new DC. It's not like he's not going to bring anybody, because everybody says, okay, D'Amico's going to take players from the Niners, Robert Salah took players, Mike McDaniel. That's what these guys do. They're going to take players they're familiar with, and that's a good call. Like, he might actually say, hey, Sam, we got an open spot. Kyle needs a backup quarterback. Would you be willing to come in? I could see that maybe being a possibility. Actually, that might actually go up my board a little bit. So, a smart call on that one. Yeah. What do you think about overall? Let's shift gears to the defense. We could sit here and talk about quarterbacks all day, but I like the hire of Wilks. I think that was the best option, right? He's the veteran. He's a previous DC. He's a previous head coach. He's a DB coach. I think DB is an issue that we've had over the last couple of years, kind of like a roller coaster. He can maybe bring some stability there. He can go call his buddy. We're talking about old players. His buddy Greedy Williams, who he used to coach in Cleveland. Come on down, man. So I don't know. I like the Wilks hire. He's a veteran guy, so you're not going to have to change too much. D'Amico was a good coach. You don't want to change too much, like Kyle said. And again, he's got the experience, so Kyle could say, here's the defense. Go coach him. I'm not going to hold your hand. So I think it was a good move. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I like it as well. I love that you said Greedy Williams because that was the first player that I thought, man, if you could bring him over because he's an unrestricted free agent as well, that could be somebody that could really bolster up the secondary. And Raj, why I like this move so much, we obviously have Kosterick. That's a big deal. He's staying. So Kosterick with his defensive line ability to create that, they've been pretty elite as long as he's been the defensive line coach. The fact that he's staying there, that's a big deal. Linebackers over the last 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, the defensive coordinator has been a linebacker coach at one point or another. So Salah and D'Amico Ryans really built up that linebacking core. We got two really, really probably the best linebacking duo in the league, and obviously Fred Warner, who's the best middle linebacker in the league, and then Dre Greenlaw, when he's playing within himself, is obviously a really great addition there. So I think linebackers, we're good. The one position that we haven't had a specialist at quite yet is the secondary, right? So this is going to give the 49ers a real opportunity to even, like, you look at how is a coach going to come in and elevate this defense that is already number one, right? How do you make a number one defense even better? Well, you bring in somebody who could elevate one portion that hasn't really been elevated to the level that it can. So I look for guys like Hufanga to take even a bigger, you know what I mean? This dude's already went from not a full-time starter to all pro, like get him even more, Mooney Ward, Lenore. Hopefully we could get Mosley back. But if you could bring over a Greedy Williams, I think that's going to be great. I think in the draft, they're going to draft, some more cornerbacks and probably a safety as well. But that's what I really like. I mean, the fact that he's going to be a seamless transition system-wise because he plays the same type of system with a lot of zone, which is what the 49ers are used to. He has that energy that I think will fit into the locker room, like fiery guy, like and a player's coach, which I think is the culture that Kyle Shanahan brings. And like I said, his talent is, being able to develop that secondary. And if we could get the secondary anywhere close to where the linebackers and the defensive line are at, that's going to be a tough defense to beat for anybody,
100%, man, because you're right. You hit on the head. The D-line, we know we're going to be good. They're going to retool it, whatever. You got Kosterick, and I was so happy that he turned down that Houston job. When I saw that news, I was like, thank God almighty, because if we would have lost this guy, I'm not going to lie, I don't care who we would have hired. I don't think our defense would have been the same because he's kind of like that hidden gem in this defense. He gets the most out of these guys. You bring in, like he could, okay, Arden Key a couple years back comes onto the team, and everybody, he's the bust. He's a terrible player. Raiders trash. He came in and made him a solid player. He got a bag, turned his career around. Kerry Hyder turned his career around. Like, he turns these guys' careers around. Charles Omenihu made him a relevant player. Samson Ebicam, like, they're not elite, but they're better than they ever played, So this guy really gets the most out of these guys. I hope they give him a big raise because he deserves it. Pay this man whatever he wants to do your D-line because he can keep that wide nine going. And you're right, with Wilkes, he can continue to have that cover 3 zone. And I think he will definitely elevate a guy like Hufanga, who second year in the league's an all-pro. That's crazy to me. So he'll make him better, help him with his coverages. That's something people have criticized him on. So maybe he'll make him better as a coverage safety. And you're right, he'll bring in some corners. And hopefully E-Man comes back. He'll improve Womack, Lenore, who was on the rise. Maybe he can get something out of Ambry Thomas. We'll see. And I think they'll draft better corners. But, again, they'll probably bring in people. And, again, we talked about Greedy Williams. That was one of my draft crushes a couple years ago. I hope he calls him up, man. That's a guy I would love to see in the Niners. But even if he doesn't bring him in, definitely this draft is going to be a very different style defensively because I think he will kind of take a safety or a corner a little earlier than you're expecting with the Niners. Because I feel like the Niners, they always kind of push those players to the back. Oh, we can wait till the 5th or 6th or 7th round. And you're sitting there going, get a corner, get a safety, get a corner. And I think this year maybe they will take one of those type of players a little earlier. So we'll see.
I think there are going to be some good options for them with their 3rd round picks to get some good value there. So I agree with you. I think one of those are going to be a corner.
Yeah, 100%. So defense definitely I think is going to be solid. But there is some holes there. I wish we would have kept DJ Jones last year. I think interior D-line definitely is still an area we need to hit. Edge rusher. Nick Bosa's out there doing everything on his own. He'll probably win Defensive Player of the Year tomorrow, but they need to give this man some help. What do you think? Are there any free agents that you're looking at, or anybody specific that you would hope that they bring into this team?
Well, I mean, I think they'll probably bring in some of the guys from, from Carolina that are free agents.
Okay.
I don't even know how to pronounce his name, but there's a IE something that people are saying are pretty much probably going to be over here.
Okay.
It'd be great if we could get Burns, right? But obviously he's going to be out the price range. But yeah, I mean, look, the good thing about where the 49ers are at with their defensive line is they've created, it's kind of like the defensive coordinator position. People are coveting that opportunity because they know if you do well as a defensive coordinator with the 49ers, you're going to get a head coaching opportunity. It's happened back-to-back years, right? The same thing with the defensive line. You just mentioned, you listed 3 or 4 players that have come here on 1-year deals, been able to be showcased on this defensive line, and gone out there and gotten a bag for it. So I do think they're going to be able to retool with players like that. I haven't done enough research to kind of know who those players can be, but we'll definitely, as the offseason starts, ramping up, we'll be able to look at that. But I do think there's certain guys on this roster that are free agents that they'll try to bring back to kind of keep on the team. And then I do think they'll bring in some of these 1-year deal type guys that just need to get showcased so they could go make their final contract.
Okay.
I think the defensive line will be fine, man. Like Nick Bosa kind of has been out there on his own his whole time here, other than, the year that, 2019 Super Bowl run, but he's been able to produce regardless. Hopefully Drake Jackson could be that guy, he's going to get his opportunity. And we've seen Raj, we've seen a good amount now of the 49ers having these kind of rookie players that haven't shown much their rookie year, but in that second year, be able to really take a step and be a contributor. We saw it with Hufanga this year. We saw it with Aaron Banks this year. So it's not like that's not we saw it with Lenore. So it's not like that's not a possibility. Definitely, I think that Drake Jackson is going to have an opportunity. He needs to work on some things, but he has the capability of being that guy. And they brought him in to be that guy, right?
I agree. And that's a big take because the 49ers, they do a really good job of developing their players because, there's Hufanga and Lenore and certain players that really took a big leap this year. Before this offseason, I remember many people were saying Niners need a safety. I don't think we can rely on Hufanga. He's not great. And he was an all-pro this year. So they can take those leaps. And you're right. With Kusurik, he's a guy that's going to really – his job this offseason is to get the most out of a guy like Drake Jackson, really get that development. Obviously, Drake's got to take it on himself to go train and hit the weight room like Kyle said. But as long as he takes care of his deal of the bargain, Kusurik's going to take care of his and make sure he gets everything he needs to succeed. So I agree. With this team, they're going to make sure that everybody's trained right. They've developed so many good players. Azeez Al-Shahir, that's a guy. He was an undrafted free agent who was missing tackles when he first came into the season. I remember preseason, I was like, oh, man, this guy can't take an angle. Now I'm like, please don't go. Please don't go this year, So that's the Niners. They developed so good. Emmanuel Mosley, he was an undrafted guy, and he became a pretty damn good player until the injuries, unfortunately. So that's what they do. I'm not too worried about their development, but you definitely want to make sure they have more I just want to see another superstar on the other side of that line with Bosa. I would love Brian Burns, but you're right. Money-wise, it's not going to happen. And again, as free agency kind of plays out, we'll see some people that may be available for them to pick up. And I'm sure they'll add a player or two here and there, whether it be the secondary or the D-line. But either way, it's exciting to see, and I think that this defense is going to be set up to be, if not the best defense, at least a top 5 defense because they have the talent. Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, Mooney Ward, Nick Bosa, Armstead, So they have the key core players. Just got to add to it a little bit. So we'll see how it goes.
It'd be nice to figure out how the Eagles do it, man. I don't know how they get all the talent that they're able to get, and be able to pay all those guys. But, obviously that's one of the reasons why they're in the Super Bowl. But, I mean, I think that I agree with you, man. It'd be nice to have somebody over there that could take advantage of the double teams that Nick Bosa has to take on. And it'd be nice to have some help in the interior, right? I mean, they obviously drafted Kinlaw to be that person. He hasn't proven to be that guy quite yet. you know, there's still talking. There's still people talking online like, you know, Kinlaw is going to come back and just wait till next year. But that's what he said about this year. So it's kind of like, I mean, we'll see. But I'm not too worried about the defensive line. I still think they're going to be productive. And look, if the secondary gets better, that also helps out the defensive line because now they're going to have, you know, the quarterback's going to have to hold the ball a little bit longer. You know, if they can't, if everybody's covered. So it can be kind of where Wilkes can help out, you know, the defensive line as well by getting the secondary to be even better. Because the secondary was still pretty damn good this year. You know what I mean? Like Mooney Ward, Lenore, when Mosley was there, they were shutting down everybody.
Good,
so
they
it's
were
not like
down.
it's not like we're saying they're a big weakness, but the fact that we could see them taking another step will only make this overall defense better.
100%. They'll take pressure off that D line, like the D line usually takes pressure off of them. So
Exactly.
it can only make them stronger. Speaking of Kinlaw, real quick, circle back to him because that's a big time. That's a player that's kind of polarizing. A lot of people talk about Kinlaw. We know the vibes. You're right. He kind of said, "Hey, you know, don't pull the receipts on me yet. Give me a season." He got hurt again, unfortunately, or he, you know, had, you know, some inflammation, some flare ups, and he didn't get to see the field a lot. Then when he did, it's like he's still developing. He didn't have the technique down. What Armstead was saying the other week after the game, but we saw the film, and he's getting pushed around. It's unfortunate. Yeah. His fourth-year option is, you know, it's up by May 1st. I don't think they picked that fourth-year option.
Fifth-year option.
Fifth-year option. Yeah, fifth-year option. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that – I think they'll give him an opportunity to, hey, go out, compete. This is training camp. See what you got. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't stay healthy or if he doesn't look like he's improved. They might cut him, man. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, picking up the fifth-year option means you pay him 10.1 fully guaranteed. There's no way that they're going to be able to take that chance on him. Not only because, you know, he hasn't proven it, but the best ability is availability, and he hasn't shown to be able to be available. I mean, I think there would be more of a discussion like if he was like when he was healthy, he was kind of like a game changer in the middle, and then they had to maybe have a decision, but I don't think it's even a decision at this point. Not only can he not stay healthy, when he's on the field, he's not really playing any kind of above average type ball out there. So yeah, I don't think you pick up that fifth-year option. I don't even think he thinks that anybody's going to pick up that fifth-year option. And, you know, I think he's still under contract, so I don't know if they cut him. So I think that they'll still just pay him out, but, you know, it won't be like that fully guaranteed type stuff because, you know, there's still a dead cap hit with him being a first-round pick. But, I mean, this is also the best opportunity for him, too. Like, he has to prove it. So now he's not only playing for a job. He's going to play for this year is a prove it year for him for the whole league now. Like if he doesn't show that he could be, you know, kind of like what we said with Trey, but it's kind of more dire for Kinlaw. This is a career defining year for him. Like, bro, if you get hurt again and can't perform, nobody's going to touch you. You're not going to make a big contract. You're going to have to be kind of bouncing around to practice squads and try to earn your way on the field. So I'm sure he's going to be really motivated this year. And, you know, hopefully the 49ers can take advantage of that and he has a big year. And whether they want to re-sign him, cool. If not, you know, go make your money somewhere else. But no way you pick up the fifth year on that.
Yeah, I don't think they pick up that 50. I'd be shocked. $10 million guaranteed? No, I don't think so. And he's played he's played a handful of games. You know, it's unfortunate. I agree. This is basically do or die, make or break, legacy, another legacy type season for a player. So this is it. You go out there, show us what you got. If you do great, you'll get paid somewhere. If not, it's the end of your days here with the Niners. Maybe somebody else will take a flyer on you and give you an opportunity, but this is it. Make or break for him.
Hashtag future Raider.
Could be. I feel bad for the guy because he does work hard. He has had injuries, but he's man. I feel bad for the guy. It's unfortunate. And I feel like he'll forever be kind of remembered as a villain in 49ers folklore because they traded away Defoe, and everybody always puts Defoe and Kinlaw, you know. Right. He'll never get rid of that label because everybody loved you. Defoe was a beloved Niner. He was great.
Right.
So he's not going to shed that.
You know?
Yeah, he's not going to shed that label. So it's unfortunate for him. Hopefully he can step in and do something. I want to shift gears. Last thing we'll talk about maybe. we got the Super Bowl, unfortunately, this weekend. We're not there. I wish we were. It sucks. You've heard all the players talking about it. You know, the window again. We talked about how the window may be closing. How many years do you feel this team still has for a window? Do you think we can make it back? And give me your thoughts on the Eagles and Chiefs. What do you think about it?
So, I mean, I've been pretty high on the Eagles even in the offseason. I picked the 49ers and the Eagles to be in the NFC Championship game last offseason. So I knew my best friend, he's a diehard Eagles fan. He actually is paying, $5,000 a ticket to go and be at the Super Bowl in Arizona. So he's like that kind of diehard. He flew out. It was he spent I think the tickets were $2,500 a piece to fly out to Philadelphia, watch the games, and all that kind of stuff. So he's that kind of diehard. So I knew that their issues were very similar to the 49ers. Amazing roster, but just a lot of injuries have held them back. And they were going to be healthy this season. So I knew they were going to really have a great season, which they did. So as far as who I think is going to win the Super Bowl, I said whoever wins the NFC Championship game is going to win the Super Bowl, and I stand by that. I think the Eagles have way more ways to win than the Chiefs do. Obviously, the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, and he could make magic happen, but it's going to be extremely tough. The Eagles can win by passing the ball, they could win by running the ball, and they could win by making sure you don't score. So when you have that much ability, it's really tough to win. I mean, really tough to beat that. So I think the Eagles win. As far as just the interviews that everybody's been doing, Raj, I mean, I'm all for it, man. I know a lot of Eagles fans are going at 49er fans and going at the players because they're not just acquiescing that the Eagles were a better team. Mm-hmm. But that's how you'd want your players to feel. You know what I mean? I want Brandon Ayuk to feel like, yo, the only reason we lost was because our quarterback wasn't playing. I want Debo to feel that way. I want CMC. And in actuality, look, I'm not saying that we are. I'm not one of those guys that's like, yo, Brock Purdy was here, we're definitely beating the Eagles, because it was going to be a tough game regardless. Yeah. We saw how that defensive line was getting to the quarterback and all that. There definitely had to be some adjustments there if the 49ers were going to win. However, for anybody to think that the 49ers weren't capable of beating that team is also being just as naive. So in reality, we just don't know. It wasn't a competitive game. It was competitive all the way up until our fourth string quarterback couldn't handle the snap, right? But they were driving at the end of the second half in a one-score game with the ball, at the beginning of the second half. So yeah, I mean, that game would have been much different if we had a healthy quarterback or we had a healthy Brock Purdy. But shoulda, coulda, woulda, man. The reality is that wasn't what happened. But I love the confidence of this team. I do think that we still have all of the core pieces that we need to be able to be a dominant team next year as well, Raj. So I think the window is still there. Obviously, usually when you're not paying big money to a quarterback, that gives you opportunity to build the team around them. And we still have that opportunity for the next couple of years, at least, to not necessarily have to pay a quarterback big money. So I think at least 2 more years for sure. And then if any of these quarterbacks, whether it be Purdy or Lance, turn into, a top 10 type talent, which I think they definitely have the capability of doing, then the window's even better. And the reason why, Raj, is because we're the type of team that could draft well and develop. So we don't necessarily need to go out in free agency to plug holes. We're able to do that through our drafting and development of players. We lost an all-pro level player in Laken Tomlinson. We got a guy like Aaron Banks, who the drop-off wasn't that much. The guy had an amazing season this year. We lost the all-pro level guy in Alex Mack, and Brendel came in, had a really decent year. We lost, a guy in Tart, Jaquaski Tart, who was, a really good player. And we replaced him with the second-year guy in Hufunga, who was an all-pro. We lost, K1, who's, one of the better nickel corners in the league. And, we put Jimmy in there. Womack played there. And, so they were able to, fix it with just development of players that they have here. So I think that talent keeps the window open, because you don't have to be like the Rams where you have to just trade away
Buy
assets
everybody.
and
Yeah.
buy
Yeah.
everybody.
That's it.
So you have a longer window when you're able to develop your own talent.
I agree with that take. I feel like obviously like the win now window might be 2 or 3 years, but I think they'll always be a competitive team with an opportunity to at least get to the playoffs because they do such a good job of developing talent. Like you lose a player and they're like, okay, this is the next guy up. It's that next man up mentality because you're right. Hufunga came in and I was like all pro 2 years in the second year. So I do have confidence in this team to continue to be competitive. But I feel like having this core group of guys, you got a Kittle and he's not going to be in his prime forever. Eventually he'll break down. But then I pray and hope that they find the guy that's going to replace Kittle, and they can boom, stream him right in and say, okay, Kittle's gone. Now we got this guy, So that's what I see this team kind of continuing to go in the next couple of years. But I hope we get a Super Bowl in at least the next year or two, man, because it's been a long time, man. It's
yeah, Shanahan needs that too, right? I mean, look,
get over that
every year Shanahan doesn't win a Super Bowl, the fan base is split 50-50 on the guy, right?
Yeah.
So, obviously it's great to be back in a position where you could be greedy again and it's Super Bowl or bust. A few years ago before Shanahan, we weren't even sniffing that, right? But now we're back in a place.
6 wins. We're barely getting 6 wins. Shanahan comes in 3 years out of 4 years. You go in the NFC Championship, and it's just like, man. And then people are like, he can't win the big one because he's choked a lot, whatever, Atlanta. And it's just like he's got this scarlet letter. That's what people see him as, is, oh, he can't win the big one. But if you look back through the history, Andy Reid was literally there so many times, and he finally figured it out. It was his quarterback. The quarterback got him over the hump. So, again, and it comes full circle to what we're talking about today is who the hell is going to be the quarterback for the 49ers in 2023? And if they figure it out and they get the right guy and the guy that comes in and does the job and they can stay healthy, we can win a Super Bowl with this team. And again, it always comes down to the quarterback. And again, we're sitting here year after year after year, going on YouTube, going on Instagram, going on social media. Who's going to be the quarterback? I think I've asked this question for the last 5 years and 6 years in a row, man. It's crazy, but here we are again. We love it.
And that's the fairest criticism on Shanahan is like, look, you've had this team now for 6 years and we still don't know who your franchise quarterback is. So, I'm a big Shanahan, Raj. I don't know if you knew that about me. I'll fight for Shanahan. Like I really think he's a guy and I'd want him to be here. But the one thing that I can't ever refute is his inability to solve this quarterback issue. And so like that's something that he needs to figure out. Hopefully it's Trey or Brock, one of those guys. If they could turn into the answer, then then we're talking about a completely different window, right? If you have a quarterback that could be a top 10 type quarterback with the talent that the 49ers are able to develop and bring in, the window is extended at that point. So but I think with just average quarterback play or above average quarterback play, the window, like we said, is about 2 years.
I think so. But again, we'll see. It's going to be an interesting offseason. You got any other comments, questions, concerns to let the faithful know about? But again,
no, man. I mean, yeah. So I have my own YouTube channel. It's called So Real Sports Talk TV. So definitely, if you like what you see, go on there. I do a lot of regular shows with Rohan Chakravarti. I work with Jesse over on Last Second Sports every Tuesday. Have a show with him. So yeah, I mean, definitely the off season's a fun time. It's great to continue to, it's great to continue to interact with 49er fans. And, hopefully you and me, Raj, will be working a lot more together through this off season as well. I had a great time, man. I appreciate you, giving me the time on your platform, and it was a great conversation.
Anytime, man. You're always welcome. Like I said, you got my DMs are open to you. Instagram, hit me up. We're live like every day. So I'd love to have you on again. And there's going to be a lot of talk. So if you ever have some time, hit me up and say, hey, can we plan something up? And I'll definitely get you on the show again. I appreciate you. Appreciate the chat. Although this is a controversial topic, the quarterback, they get a little feisty in the chat. But hey, we love it. That's sure. 49ers for you. And again, everybody have a good rest of your day. I love you. I'll probably see you later tonight. Have a good night. Take care.